Turn with me, if you will, to Exodus chapter 20. I have been preaching through the Ten Commandments. We're looking at the second commandment today. Let me read from chapter 20, verse 4 through 6. You shall not make yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and the fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. The Lord said, you make no graven images, idols. In the biblical times, they had many idols, pagan gods, graven images. I think about 25, 26 some years ago, just before coming to First Baptist Church of Savage, the International Mission Board asked me to go and help Pittsburgh Baptist Church, because there were so many international coming to that area, Ukrainians, Eastern Europeans, Koreans, Chinese, Asian Indians. They said, hey, the church is kind of wanting to take the next step to have an international ministry there, so would you go and help? So they asked me to drive on Saturdays, get back Saturday night, and I used to drive a few months, and then they felt pity on me, and they said, we'll fly you in and out. So that was good. But while I was driving, remember back in those days, we didn't have cell phones. And then also we didn't have GPS. Remember that? We forgot all those days? You used to buy the map, remember? Got to mark everything. And then you would look for landmarks. So the first time that I was driving into Pittsburgh and got into the Beltway looking for a landmark, and I found a steeple, beautiful, Episcopalian church. And every time for the first 5 months that they made me drive, and I go and look for the steeple, that I know that I'm in town. And all of a sudden, steeple disappeared, gone. I said, my goodness, what's happening here? Steeple's gone, but at least I got the route down, so I know that I could go. And I asked the pastor at Pittsburgh Baptist Church, hey, Daniel was his name. I said, hey, tell me what's going on. And you don't know that, Paul? I said, I don't know. You know, the Episcopalian Church, they sold the property to a group of Hindus. Ooh, I didn't know that. What is going to happen? They're going to demolish the church and build a temple. Wow. Lo and behold, a marble temple came up. Guess what? Before you know it, there's so many graven images were put in there. Hindu gods. When God said, do not make graven images, it talks about two kinds of idol worship. One is literal idol worship. And I remember in the 80s, we hardly can think of a Hindu temple anywhere in this area. Nothing. There was one place called Theosophical Society. They met in Holiday Inn in Rockville, Maryland. In fact, I was called to speak there for Christmas. And they told me, you need to speak about one God. I said, okay. These are highly educated guys, Hindus. And I said, well, I'll speak about the Word. They said, all right, fine. So I took John. I said, the Word, that was in the beginning. And that Word was with God. And He came to dwell among us. That's called Jesus. And that's why Christmas is. Those guys were cringing. And after that, I haven't received any invitation to go. That's fine. But do you know, despicably, we have in the United States, I counted it, almost close to 500 temples today. And if you don't know it, in New Jersey, in Robbinsville, they bought 162 acres of land to build the largest Hindu temple in the world. It's near completion. Next year, it's going to be dedicated. And the school systems now are asking folks to write theses on cultural exchanges and having field trips to these temples. Do you know how many mosques are there in the United States? It will boggle your mind. I counted them. And you can go online or go to library and get that. And I counted 3,186 mosques. Countless Buddhist temples. That's the bad news, that America is becoming pagan. Increasingly becoming pagan. Those of us from Indian descent, we know India is cursed because of idol worship. I know that. Every corner, idol. And anytime you bring in a graven image, God said, I cannot tolerate that. God told them, don't make anything. Well, the bad news is that, yes, America is becoming pagan. But the good news is, do you know how many churches in the United States are? Take a guess. 500,000 or more. Believe it or not, I went to a Presbyterian church. Not to attend. I was talking to, they were searching for a pastor there. So they were just sitting there and asking me some of the things. And I asked them the first question, saying that, well, you have a synod and they have a committee to look for a pastor from Presbyterian Church. And it's not Reformed. But I think the Presbyterian Church of America, I said, hey, are you growing? You know what? The lady said, we're not. We're not growing. We are declining. So when you put the evangelicals in America, today we have 95 million evangelicals. That's a good news. But when we read the commandments, like I said, we think about these graven images. And also, we think about some modern idols that we have in America. As a matter of fact, the modern graven images in our hearts, they are spreading like gangrene and getting into Christianity today. And, got the PowerPoint coming up? All right. So, gave the title, No Other Gods But Jesus. And then, paganism in America, I explained it to you in your notes. But I want to put two quotes for you to read. Look at what President Abraham Lincoln said. America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. No other force is going to come and destroy us, but we destroy ourselves. I think that is happening because of this pagan mindset. Modern idols. I'll get to that. And here's another quote. I will read it to you. Ronald Reagan. He said, if we ever forget that we are one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under. Ain't that true? Do you know, I was trying to get some nice quotations from presidents. I couldn't find a good one from any of the current one or for the last two ones. Just couldn't find it. I had to go back to Abraham Lincoln, go back to Washington, and go back to all those old ones. And I think these new ones are good for nothing. I'm sorry to say that. Because they have nothing good to say. And as a matter of fact, we could listen to them on TV, and I don't think I can quote what they're saying from the pulpit, because those are vulgar these days. I mean, people are not really saying anything that is so good. Look at this. Beautiful nuggets. Because they envision. I believe Abraham Lincoln envisioned something that is coming down the pike. And he was true to his statement. I'm going to give you three things. First modern idol is called greed. See, greed is excessive desire, I think I put it up there, for possession and status. That's what greed is. Greed is excessive, something over and above. Desire to possess more, and more. Colossians 3:5. Write it down. Colossians 3:5. Put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you, sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry. When Paul was visiting a city in Rome and other places, of course in Greece, he went to Athens. And this is what he's writing. Acts 17:16. Let me read what Paul is saying. Now Paul was waiting for them at Athens, and his spirit was provoked within him as he saw what the city was full, that the city was full of idols. There are many warnings in the Bible against these idols. When I see Paul went to Athens and saw those idols, today you go to any city. As you go in, you would find billboards all over. What are the billboards? It's all greed. All greed. At the bottom, have you seen that one? At the bottom, in fine print, you can't even read. Those are the warnings. You can't read. Because they give you the false thing first. The Bible has a lot of warnings against that. Jesus said, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. And man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possession. And then do not store up for yourself treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal. You cannot serve both money and God. Jesus said that. See, it is the love of money, not the money itself. Because when people love, they worship the money. Money comes between God and us. It is a greed, excessive mindset to possess more. When the young rich ruler came to Jesus, the Lord told him, go and sell everything and come and follow me. And that man went sad. Jesus was driving a point across, saying that the problem with the man is that he could not follow me because his position came between me and him. That is greed. Our heart desire should be store up our riches in heaven. Now, when I say this, I need to really say it prudently, because there is nothing wrong in wanting to have fashionable things in life. There's nothing wrong in building a house. There's nothing wrong in driving a nice car. There's nothing wrong in all those things. But the moment you make them as your idol that comes between you and God, then you're devoting your time completely to acquire those things, then it becomes an idol. You're making an image in your heart. See, so many people are running their lives pursuing after these idols, greed. When you do that, God said, you are not storing up in heaven. Paul said, well, before Paul, Apostle John said, 1 John 5:2, little children, talks about church members. He's calling little children because he was old at that time, and he wrote that. Keep yourselves from idols. Greed is an excessive desire to have more possession. Secondly, pleasure. Modern idol. We live in a culture that idolizes pleasure gods. Yes, they do. Entertainment, drugs, fleshly lifestyle, promiscuous lifestyle. And all of this, I call them pleasure. In the last days, Paul is writing to Timothy. Let me read that to you. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1 through 5. But understand this, that in the last days there will be some time of difficulty, for people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, and slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than the lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness, but denying the power. Avoid such people. So we in America, as Abraham Lincoln said, we are giving into this pleasure. The question is, you think God is opposed to pleasure? Some people think that God is a taskmaster. He grades you on the curve. He throws you a curveball. No, that's not true. He's not an accountant to keep tab of every wrong things that you do and say, hey, Paul, I'm going to bring you down. No. And do you know God created in every man the ability to enjoy, have pleasure? Because here, psalmists say, have a joyful heart. And it is a medicine. but a crushed spirit would dry up your bones. And then a glad heart makes a cheerful face. That means rejoicing. God created this beautiful world. You can rejoice and have pleasure in things that are not of the flesh. That's why I go and golf, enjoy the nature. Did y'all get it? There you go. Mr. Harry said, let's enjoy the nature. Mr. Benny said, enjoy the nature. But do you know, when that becomes an idol, then pleasure becomes your idol. Do you know that God takes pleasure? He enjoys it? Yes. Zechariah 3:17. For example, he says that God delights in us and sings over us. See, God is a God of joy. As a matter of fact, my first youth minister at Bethel, Ryan Strother, the kid, knowing that I played soccer, he found a replica somewhere. I don't know where he found it. So he brought it to me and gave a gift, a beautiful gift. You know what he said? I'll give this gift to you. And that gift is Jesus playing soccer with the children, smiling and laughing. Man, where'd you get this? This is nice. He said, have you ever seen a picture of Jesus smiling? No, we always have this, quiet Jesus, sometimes so boring. But Jesus was not like that. He took delight in all of us. He was a rejoicing God. It is the devil, the thief, comes to destroy and kill. But I have come that you may have life, have it more abundantly. That means pleasurably. Enjoy it. God designed the human body to have pleasure in life. Now you go to a restaurant. You might go this afternoon, right? When you get that thing put in your tongue, it tastes good, ain't it? It's pleasurable. You get the juicy, chunk of steak, and you cut that. I don't like the, red thing in there. I don't like the blood oozing out, but when I cut it, I want to see that brown juice comes out, right? By the way, I'm promoting this. If you go to, Famous Days, they got beef briskets. It is delicious. Just go get it. And I love it. So, we have this taste buds because it's pleasurable. And God created it. So God is not against pleasure. He created it. And He wanted people to have their enjoyment. I want you to know, some people say, well, pleasure and joy in Christ means that you read the Bible, you meditate, you serve God, that is joyful. Yes, I'm not saying it's not. Certainly, we do take pleasure in those things, but not to the exclusion. Listen to me. Not to the exclusion of other pleasures that God created and called it good. So Christians are called to have pleasure, but don't make pleasure as your idol. And here it is. We need to understand and know the difference between what God ordained to be pleasurable and what the world is calling pleasurable. Because we live in this fallen world, sin-infested world, so the world is offering you what the world calls it pleasurable. They're not. And the more we follow that, we become like the prodigal son. Leave the father's home and make the idol of pleasure. Before too long, you'll wake up in the pig pen. Thirdly, the modern idol is called work. Some Christians go to work early in the morning, come late at night. It's called workaholism. And here it is. When you read in the Bible, God never said don't work. I'll get to that later. But some people devote their time to their career, job, even ministry. I'm here to vouch for that. Even you could make ministry as an idol, run and do. The more you make ministry as your idol, guess what? You will make people as subjects to you. Not as someone who needs to be ministered to. You need to put the brake. And I'm here to publicly say the man who helped me to put a brake is Mr. Benny. He said, I have golf clubs with me, come on out. You're doing too much. Because I would travel to Pittsburgh, go to Rolling Hills, and go to First Baptist, and they say, you can't do all these. Come on, Mr. Benny, no, come on out. And then, I'm sure he will regret the rest of his life for teaching me golf, but that's all right. And then he took me out, and then I gave the golf bag and the golf clubs to Stephen, his son. He got mad at me. Why would you give my clubs to my son? I told Steve that, do you know that Dad got mad at me by giving those things to you? I said, I'll get them. But the point is this. You could be worn out. You could make your work, even ministry, as your idol. See, secular jobs are not forbidden. We know that Paul was a tent maker, Luke was a physician, but God gives you the job. But here it is. Your focus should not only be at your work, because then it becomes your obsession. Are you with me? If you're obsessed with your work, even after coming home, still thinking about your work, if you're obsessed, it becomes an idol. That's a modern idol in many Christian homes. That's why so many are neglecting God's Word, prayer, Bible, and coming to worship God. Because they made that as their priority. Obsessed. Abraham Lincoln said, that's going to get us. That's idolatry. Now, what are the dangers of these things, modern idols? God said, don't make these things. Greed, pleasure, and work. 3 things. Get this from me. First thing, the danger is deception. Yesterday at a housewarming prayer meeting, I told the story of this leaning tower of Pisa, right? Where? In Italy. You know why it's leaning? Because it took about 199 years to build that. 1,000 years ago they built that, and every time they build, there's a war, they stop, they build, there's a war, they stop, and then finally they try to build and keep it that way because every year engineers are working hard to reinforce that, and they spend millions and millions of dollars because of one fatal mistake that was made in the beginning. Because they did not test the soil, they built it on a sinking soil. The mistake is costing them money today. It was a bell tower, 8-story tall. And same thing, the pleasures of this world, they are sinking sand. No money, no status would save a person. Because when the storms of life comes, if your foundation is not built on the rock of Jesus, you will tumble down. Regardless of how much money you make, regardless of how much pleasure you enjoy in your life, regardless of how much work you have done and reached the top of your ladder, does not matter. When a storm comes, when your life is not built on the solid rock of Jesus, the Lord said your house will come down. The leaning tower is an example for all of us. Because you're not useful. Nobody's living there. It is deceptive. Let me read this. Hebrews 13:5. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God said, never will I leave you nor forsake you. It's beautiful. Why God attached this with the love of money? Because God knows that we become lonely if you're low in our cash. And God said, I would never leave you. The promise is God is going to be with us. And it is destructive. Let me read the commandment. God said, you shall not bow down to them and serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the 3rd and the 4th generation. Now, the word jealous means that I'm envious of others. It means that I demand total, exclusive attention from you. In the Old Testament, God considered Israel to be the bride. And they went away after another man. In the New Testament, the church is called the bride. And then the church today, if they're going away from God, then it is distortion. And the second is, of course, I'll come to the distortion. I'm talking about destruction now. I'll come to that third one. Second one later. Now, distortion. Because God considered it to be the bride. You know, God said, I will require this through 3rd, 4th, and several generations. Does not mean, I'm going to clarify this, does not mean that God is going to require the parents' sin from children. But what it does mean is that the influence of parents would continue in children's lives. If a parent is really devoting having graven images or other images like greed, pleasure, and work, the kids are going to learn. Absolutely. That's what is going to pass on from one generation to the other. That is destructive. Distortion. Psalmist David is saying the second one. For the Lord will vindicate his people and have compassion on his servants. The idols of the nations are silver and gold and the work of human hands. They have mouths but do not speak. They have eyes, they do not see. They have ears but do not hear. Nor is there any breath in their mouths. Those who make them become like them. I like that. Psalm 135:14. What it is if you worship money, we will do whatever it takes to make money, good or bad. Then if you worship pleasure, we will do anything to make ourselves pleasurable, good or crooked. And if we worship success, we would take any path that is required to climb the ladder, whether good or bad, because we become like that. So these idols, modern idols, or it would distort, destroy, and they're very deceptive. Watch out. And God said He's not going to leave us that way. The commandment tells us this. Because the offspring, if you're blessed by the Lord, He's going to bless us. How can the Lord bless us? We have victory over. Number one, spend time with God. Pretty simple. Spend time. Start the day with prayer. Remember my parents getting up 5:30 in the morning, between 5 and 5:30. Still remember as a little boy. And as a little boy, I'll just pull the blanket and sleep because they pray. Still remember that. Prayer is important, folks. I know that we all work and then different times, but you can pull in the parking lot, spend some time in prayer. Lord, give me this day. We work at odd hours. Wherever you are, start the day with prayer. Whatever time you're starting the day. You could be starting in the evening or in the afternoon or middle of the night or the next day morning. But pray. First, prayer is important. And when you pray, then you ask, oh Lord, I do not want to be driven by these ideas of this world that tells me to have pleasure in worldly means. I'm not going to go there. And give me the pleasure of being in your presence. Pray. Spend time with God. Because we are bombarded with counterfeit messages today in the world. And I really feel for the teenagers or little kids that are going to school. Do you know that on the other day, believe it or not, went to, of course, Clyde's house for practice. All of us go to practice there. And then Ruth Ann gave me a book that she got from the library for children. It's a reading book for little kids. And then in that storybook, and one child is talking to the other child, saying that, did you bring your mom and dad? The other one said, yeah, I brought two mothers. See how deceptive it is? Getting into a child's heart from that age? So they're faced with all these challenges. How in the world you can explain to a 3-year-old two mothers? You can't. Because Abraham Lincoln said, if you destroy ourselves, it is no other forces but within. Because we are having these images. Idol worship. Secondly, spend time with God's people, folks. Church is important. Let me read a beautiful Bible verse. 1 Timothy, I'm going to close this. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 14 and 15. Let me read that to you. 1 Timothy 3. I hope to come to you soon, Paul is writing. But I'm writing these things to you so that if I delay, you may know how one ought to behave in the household of God, talking about the church, which is the church of the living God, a pillar and a buttress, which means support of the truth. A church is a support of the truth. A pillar of the truth is church. Yes, you can be in front of the TV. Yes, you can go to big campaigns. But nothing like being in the presence of a fellow believer. That's what's going to keep you from idol worship. Our spiritual house would collapse if we seek after these modern idols called greed, pleasure, and work. Because they are deceptive, they will distort you, and they will destroy you.
The only way that we could obey the commandment of God, so do not make any graven images. When you worship me, when you seek me, I'm going to bless you and thousands of generations to come. What a promise it is. Let's bow our heads and surrender everything to the Lord.